The story I'm about to tell you happened in November 2025. In Thailand. More cinematic than any movie. Hard to believe but actually true. A miraculous story of one woman. If this story were a movie, you probably would have said this. This is too unrealistic. How is this even possible? But this is a true story. Now then, please listen quietly. This story is about an amazing miracle that occurred at the boundary between death and life. November 21, 2025, Thursday. Phitsanulok, a city in northern Thailand. A 65-year-old woman was lying on her bed at home. She had been unable to get out of bed for 2 years already. The exact illness wasn't known, but she was getting weaker and weaker. Her older brother had been caring for his sister for 3 years. But that day, his sister's condition suddenly worsened. Her breathing became weaker and weaker until finally, she appeared to stop breathing. The brother checked for a pulse but couldn't feel one. Officials came to check and said, she appears to have passed away. During her life, the sister had once told her brother, "Brother, when I die, I want to donate my organs. I'll go to a big hospital in Bangkok. I want to help someone." The brother wanted to fulfill his sister's last wish, so he placed his sister in a coffin. It was a white coffin, and he loaded the coffin onto a pickup truck and set off. Destination Bangkok. From Phitsanulok to Bangkok was a full 500 kilometers. Even farther than Seoul to Busan. The brother drove through the night. Inside the coffin, his sister lay. November 22, Friday morning. The brother arrived at a large hospital in Bangkok, the place where his sister had promised to donate her organs while she was alive. With his exhausted body, he went to the hospital reception. "My sister wanted to donate her organs. Please accept her body." But the hospital staff shook their head. "I'm sorry, but you don't have a death certificate. Without a death certificate, we cannot accept her." A death certificate is a document where a doctor officially confirms that this person has died. In Korea too, when someone passes away, a doctor must confirm it and issue a death certificate. But the brother hadn't obtained this document. It was a rural area, and he didn't have the means to call a doctor. The officials had only confirmed that she appeared to have died. The brother was at a loss. He had driven 500 kilometers through the night, only to be rejected. He got back into the truck. The coffin was still loaded in the back of the truck. "What do I do now?" the brother thought. "Organ donation won't work. Then at least I should have her cremated." Thailand is a Buddhist country. When many people pass away, they are cremated at temples. Especially for poor people, there are temples that offer free cremation. The brother went to find Wat Rat Prakong Tham Temple in Nonthaburi, an area near Bangkok. November 23, Sunday afternoon. The brother arrived at the temple. The temple's finance manager, Payrat Sudthup, greeted him. "How may I help you? My sister has passed away. Can you cremate her?" Payrat nodded. "Of course. Our temple provides free cremation services for those in need." But then he asked, "Do you have a death certificate?" The same question again. "Well, I don't." Payrat also looked troubled. "I'm sorry, but we cannot proceed with cremation without a death certificate. It's the law." But Payrat was a kind person. "Don't worry, I'll tell you how." to get a death certificate. He sat the brother down and began explaining carefully. First, you need to go to a nearby hospital and get confirmation from a doctor. Then the doctor will issue a death certificate. The brother nodded. As he listened, the coffin was still loaded in the back of the truck. The afternoon sun was shining on the white coffin. Peyrot was continuing his explanation. That's when it happened. Knock, knock, knock. A small sound was heard. Knock, knock, knock. Peyrot stopped talking. Did you just hear that sound? The brother listened carefully too. Knock, 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 knock. The sound continued. It was coming from the coffin. Peyrot's eyes widened. That knocking sound. From over there. He rushed to the truck. Other temple staff also heard the sound and gathered. Open the coffin. Peyrot shouted. His hands were trembling. This was the first time in his entire life for something like this. They carefully opened the coffin lid. At that moment, everyone held their breath. Inside the coffin lay the 65-year-old woman. But her eyes were slightly open. Her hands were slowly moving. Her mouth twitched slightly. She's alive, someone shouted. Peyrot later told reporters, I was truly shocked when we opened the coffin. She had her eyes slightly open, and she was tapping on the side of the coffin. She must have been tapping for quite a while. The temple staff immediately called 911. Please come quickly. There's someone here who woke up inside a coffin. Even for the paramedics, this must have been a first-time call. A few minutes later, the ambulance arrived. The paramedics carefully lifted the woman out of the coffin. She looked very weak, but was definitely alive. She was breathing, and her pulse was beating. The ambulance took the woman to a nearby hospital. The brother couldn't believe it. My sister was alive? His expression was a mix of shock, joy, and confusion. The woman who arrived at the hospital was immediately moved to the emergency room. Doctors ran tests, and they discovered something surprising. The woman was suffering from severe hypoglycemia. Hypoglycemia is a condition where the amount of sugar in the blood becomes too low. Our bodies use sugar glucose for energy. Especially the brain uses tremendous amounts of sugar. But when there's too little sugar, the brain doesn't function properly. In severe cases, one can lose consciousness or fall into a coma. This woman hadn't eaten properly. For 2 years, she had only been lying in bed, and her nutritional state was very poor. That's why her blood sugar had dropped to dangerous levels. The doctor explained. This patient's heart hadn't stopped. Her breathing hadn't completely stopped either. She had just fallen into a deep coma because her blood sugar was too low. Her breathing was so weak, it was barely audible, and her pulse was barely detectable. This condition is called apparent death. It looks like death, but the person is actually alive. People in the old days called such people the living dead. What if there had been a death certificate? What if the hospital or temple had accepted her right away? The woman would have been cremated while still alive. Just the thought is horrifying. But because there was no death certificate, both places rejected her, and thanks to that, there was time for Peyrot to explain. And during that time, the woman gradually regained consciousness, enough to knock on the coffin. Perhaps, not having a death certificate was a blessing. The temple's head monk Immediately made a decision. Our temple will
When you
cover
go
all medical expenses. It was the monks' compassion. The temple posted about this incident on Facebook. They also uploaded a video footage of the woman moving her hands inside the coffin in the back of the truck. Footage of paramedics moving the woman. This video spread instantly. People across Thailand were shocked. Oh my God, is this real? I can't believe it. This is so scary. But thank goodness she survived. Soon foreign media outlets also reported this news. American CNN, British BBC, AP News, Al Jazeera. The whole world heard this amazing story. People left comments. If there had been a death certificate, something terrible would have happened. Waking up inside a coffin is the worst nightmare. This is truly a miracle. This grandmother is very blessed. In fact, this wasn't the first such incident. In 2024 in Nebraska, USA, a 74-year-old woman was found breathing at a funeral home, and in 2023 in Iowa, a 66-year-old woman woke up at a funeral home. Doctors explain that especially with elderly people, vital signs can be so weak that without proper examination, they can be mistaken for dead. What can we learn from this incident? First, the importance of confirmation. Life and death are not matters to be judged lightly. A professional must properly confirm. Second, the meaning of procedures. At first, being rejected because of the death certificate must have been frustrating, but that procedure saved the sister's life. Third, the miracle of coincidence. What if the brother hadn't gone to the temple? What if Peyrot hadn't kindly explained? If even one thing had been different, the outcome would have been completely different. Fourth, the mystery of life. Life is far more mysterious and resilient than we think. November 23, 2025. A temple in Nonthaburi, Thailand. The small knocking sound, heard from inside the coffin. Knock knock knock. That sound saved a person's life. This story was shared with hundreds of millions of people around the world. Some people felt fear. Some people felt it was a miracle. Some people reconsidered the preciousness of life. Everyone, what if you had been that brother? Driving 500 kilometers, rejected twice, and then suddenly, hearing knocking from the coffin? It would probably be an unforgettable experience for life. Sometimes what seems like a bad thing can actually be a blessing. Being rejected for not having a death certificate ultimately ended up saving a life. Life really is unpredictable. This story will be remembered as one of the most amazing, true stories of 2025. Hard to believe, but it actually happened. More dramatic than any movie. A real story, and most importantly, a story that reminds us of the preciousness of life. How was today's story? The 65-year-old Thai woman who woke up in a coffin. She is somewhere right now, alive and breathing, remembering this miraculous moment for the rest of her life. And we too should remember this story, that life is precious. Miracles do happen, and never giving up is important. Everyone, tonight, before you go to sleep comfortably, how about being grateful for being alive, for breathing, for being with your loved ones? Well then, that's all for today's story. Have a good night, and remember, knock knock knock, that small knocking sound saved a life.